Ahmad. Walhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Taqabbalallahu minkum.
Amin, amin, ya Rabbal Alamin. Before we proceed with the lecture, I would like to invite Professor Dr. Muhammad Rezan Othman, President and Vice Chancellor of UNICEL, to deliver his welcoming speech and to introduce our speaker today, Dr. Makio Miyagawa. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Professor Dr. Muhammad Rezan Othman.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. His Excellency Dr. Makio Miyagawa, the Ambassador of Japan to Malaysia, Mr. Jacob Lee Choi Kok, Chairman of Federation of Malaysian Manufacturers FMM Selangor, Prof. Dr. Mat Sidin Ahmad Isa, Vice President and Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academic Research and Industrial Linkage, Professor Muhammad Noor Nawawi, Vice President and Deputy Vice Chancellor, Administration, Planning and Global Engagement, top management of UNICEL, deans, lecturers, members of the floor, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and very good day to all. Alhamdulillah, my highest gratitude to Almighty. With His blessing, we are all gathered here today to the greatest of gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His blessing that we can all come together in this special lecture that will be delivered by His Excellency Dr. Makio Miyagawa, the Japanese ambassador to Malaysia, who is also the recipient of the honorary degree of Doctor of Philosophy of Political Science for UNICEL, from UNICEL, in conjunction with the recent 13th UNICEL convocation ceremony. On behalf of the university, I welcome Dr. Makio to UNICEL, his third time in these 2 months. Twice in UNICEL, Besar Jaya, and today at UNICEL Shah Alam campus. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the floor, today Dr. Makio will deliver his lecture entitled Japan Re-engagement with Southeast Asia, particularly with Malaysia under the new administration, or we call it Malaysia Baru or New Malaysia. I'm sure that this lecture today will bring us a new perspective on the diplomatic, economic and social relations between Malaysia and Japan, especially under the new administration. Before we listen to his lecture, let me briefly introduce our speaker today. Dr. Makio Miyagawa was born on the 6th of January 1951. He is married and the couple have 1 son. And Dr. Makio, your wife is keeping asking my wife how she managed 7 children. Because you only have 1. Upon completion of his high school education, Dr. Makio Miyagawa entered the University of Tokyo, Japan. He completed the degree of Bachelor of Science in Aeronautical and Space Engineering in 1974. In 1976, Dr. Makio Miyagawa began his career in the civil service of the government of Japan, and he began his diplomatic career in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in 1979. Following his appointment, he began several stints in various positions in Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Japan. His first appointment in Malaysia was in 1993, where he stayed for 3 years, until 1996, as Counselor for Political Affairs in the Embassy of Japan. Despite his busy schedule as a diplomat for his country, Dr. Makio Miyagawa remained dedicated to academia, especially in the areas concerning his diplomatic career. He completed his degree of Doctor of Philosophy, PhD in International Relations. He started with science and ended up in International Relations, and law from no other than Oxford University, United Kingdom. In June 1989, with the title of his thesis, Economic Sanctions, Theory and Practices, with particular reference to US sanctions against Iran. Following several other appointments in the Foreign Service, finally in 2014, he was again sent to Kuala Lumpur, this time as the Ambassador of Japan to Malaysia. As a recognition of his long and illustrious career, Dr. Makio Miyagawa was awarded the National Order of Merit from the government of France on the 21st of February 2014. During his distinguished service as a diplomat, Dr. Makio Miyagawa has written numerous policy papers and gave lectures, presentations, and participated in eminent panel discussions on a variety of topics such as diplomacy, global issues, international relations and conflict resolution, strategic and peace studies, global security challenges, and other topics relevant to the peace and prosperity of Asia and the world at large. Today we are honored to have Dr. Makio here again to deliver his lecture, Japan Re-engagement with Southeast Asia, particularly with Malaysia under the new administration. With this, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you His Excellency Dr. Makio Miyagawa. Thank you very much.
So this is the salutation. Thank you. Good morning, Yang Berbahagia Dr. Muhammad Noor, Azman Hassan, Deputy Director General of Higher Education Department, representing Datin Paduka, Dr. Siti Hamisa Binti Tapsi, Director General of Higher Education Department. Yang Berbahagia Tuan Yaakob Lee Cho Ko, Chairman, Federation of Malaysian Manufacturer, Selangor. Yang Berbahagia Professor Dato Dr. Muhammad Razwan Osman, President and Vice Chancellor, University Selangor. Yang Berhasa Professor Dr. Muhammad Sidin Ahmad Ishak, Vice President and Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academic and Research and Industrial Linkage. Yang Berbahagia Professor Dr. Muhammad Noor Nawawi, Vice President and Deputy Vice Chancellor, Administration, Planning, Global Engagement, Top Management of UNICEL, Deans and Directors, Lecturers, Honorable Guests, respected media, and ladies and gentlemen, good morning again. First of all, I'm truly most humbled to have received the honorary doctorate degree from esteemed University Selangor. It is a distinct honor to me as well as to my family. And let me reiterate my profound gratitude for the conferment and memorable ceremony on the 27th October. This is my special day. I'm delighted to come to University Selangor again and very happy to share my thoughts with on long-lasting relations, engagements and collaborations between Southeast Asia and Japan, particularly with Malaysia under the new administration, and amongst others, the regional community building in this region, East Asia, or our region. The subject is very timely as Malaysia and Japan celebrated or had celebrated. Okay, should I start again? Or no? Malaysia, Japan has been celebrating the 60th anniversary since last year. And also this year marks the 45th anniversary of Japan-ASEAN friendship and cooperation. Since the stunning success of political transformation in Malaysia, relations between Malaysia and Japan have undergone remarkable reinforcement. A number of high-level leaders have visited our nation from Malaysia for the last half a year since the change of administration. Prime Minister Tun Dr. Mahathir already 3 times. Deputy Prime Minister and 12 ministers, including defense, multimedia and communication, economic affairs, education, transport, entrepreneurial development, works, and foreign ministers. I just came back from Tokyo over the weekend, and during the 2 weeks since the end of October, His Imperial Highness, the Crown Prince of Japan, welcomed His Royal Highness Sultan Nazrin Shah, the acting Yandi Prutoan Agon, in his palace in Tokyo, and Tun Dr. Mahathir was very warmly and cordially received by His Majesty for lunch at the Imperial Palace and held very fruitful discussions with his counterpart, our Prime Minister Abe. While the new government has been in its strenuous endeavor to build a new Malaysia, achieving a far higher level of justice, fairness, and transparency, bringing Malaysia back to normalcy and back to an honorary growth path, which it took with pride till 1.5 decades ago. There is a renewed momentum of elevating the already cordial Japan-Malaysia relations onto even a higher plane under the leadership of Tun Dr. Mahathir, who expressed strong wishes to resuscitate the Look East policy. Beyond this, the transformation provides East Asia with an opportunity to build, strengthen, and modernize the region on a solid ground of transparency and good governance, which will help the whole region to create a world top-class community. Over the last 2 decades, ASEAN has grown rapidly through expansion of membership in the late 90s, reinforced solidarity year after year, enlarged cooperation from trade, investment, finance, and other economic, social, cultural fields to political and security areas, enhancing consolidation of a regional community. Back in 1980s, things were different. Asia was rising, but the true explosive growth was still to come. It was in the 1980s that the phrase Asian century was coined. But for many observers, Asia was still tomorrow's story. But now, tomorrow has already come. And economically, politically, Asia is now at the heart of the world affairs. The history of regional community building in Southeast Asia dates back half a century. In the 50s and 60s, this region was still fraught with confrontation, internal insecurity, and threat of communist infiltration. ASEAN was formed in 1967 by 5 nations not belonging to a communist bloc. The late Lee Kuan Yew, the Singapore Prime Minister, reflected on ASEAN in his autobiography, describing as, quote, unpromising start, but promising future, unquote. Over the last half a century, ASEAN has skillfully managed what one calls a sport shirt diplomacy to strengthen solidarity, deepen cooperation, and expand its wings. They overcame challenges during the bipolar Cold War era, and the end of the Cold War in the early 90s offered them an alluring opportunity to encourage the participation of all the countries in Southeast Asia to ASEAN, subscribing to the aims and principles and purposes of ASEAN. Now, ASEAN has already become 10. As the oldest partner of ASEAN, Japan's engagement and efforts for realizing peace and prosperity in this region is nothing new. Strengthening the relationship among nations in Asia has consistently been one of the pillars of our foreign policy. Historically, even before ASEAN was formed, Japan has realized an acute need for the creation of a regional cooperation framework in Southeast Asia and rendered earnest support for the establishment. In November 1954, before Malaysia obtained independence, our Prime Minister then, Yoshida, addressed at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., emphasized that there exists a vital stake in the progress of group formation of the free Asian nations and stressed the determination of Japan to support and guide this move. Japan has continuously been offering support for ASEAN's formation, economic foundation, and political stability for many years, since its inception till today, and even days before ASEAN's formation. In terms of economic relations between Japan and ASEAN, ASEAN has already become Japan's second largest trading partner, bigger than the US. Regarding investment, Japan is the second largest investor to ASEAN, next to the European Union, but if one counts investment from each single nation, Japan is ASEAN's top investor. ASEAN is Japan's third largest investment destination, after the US and European Union. So you realize how important ASEAN is to Japan. From 1980 to 2012, ASEAN has received our official development aid amounting to over 200 billion US dollar, the biggest share, which already reached 22.5% amongst the whole assistance of Japan to the whole world. It is our pleasure to see today most states in Southeast Asia self-reliant and prospering. Well, amongst G7 countries, G7 is a grouping of advanced industrialized nations. In the 1980s and 1990s, there was an implicit division of responsibility with respect to assisting the development of the third world. The European G7 members, which is Britain, France, and Germany, and Italy, focused on the development of African and Middle Eastern nations. The United States and Canada were to promote development in Latin America, and Japan was to strive the development ASEAN nations, including China and India. If you compare the developmental stages achieved since then till today, I presume, and you may agree, that Japan did fairly well, despite being in a position where it has had to fulfill its responsibility alone. The robust economic growth of Asia over the last 20 to 30 years is remarkable and impressive in Asia. The transformation has been progressing. Asian economy has survived and overcome extreme hardships that struck it twice, late 1990s and 2008. The Asian economic crisis in 1997, which imposed devastating effects upon East Asian economies, provided useful lessons to get prepared for any similar shocks in future. It was much to our relief that their preparatory measures, as well as the enlarged size of East Asian economies, which doubled or even tripled between 1997 and 2008, well alleviated the second shock in 2008, which they received from the Lehman crisis. As the ambassador of Japan to Malaysia, I could not find anything more delightful than this real advancement of ASEAN and Southeast Asia, much more so for our home country. For longer years, cordial ties have developed between Southeast Asia and Japan. Trade links and business partnerships are remarkably tight and expanding. Investment from Japan has been ranking highest for many years, as I mentioned. Vibrant partnerships in industries and youth exchanges in educational institutions have all been expanding and spreading at a remarkable pace, even with security and defense cooperation commencing recently. Comparison with the European Union is very intriguing. In terms of the annual growth rate, EU is growing only 1.8%, whereas ASEAN is expanding at a remarkable pace, 5.2%. As regards the population, EU 27 countries has 500 million, whereas ASEAN only 10 has over 600 million. ASEAN's total gross domestic product tripled over the last 10 years, and its trade has already reached 7% of the world trade. Further, the community is ready to proclaim determination to strengthen political and security cooperation in this region of critical geostrategic importance. Three of these facts and figures are remarkably promising. But despite its promising future, for ASEAN to become one like European Union is still a tomorrow's story. ASEAN is now called a community, but it has yet to be established as a regional organization that supersedes the sovereignty of member states. ASEAN is still simply an association of member countries and is no more than a body of enhanced cooperation amongst 10 countries. European Union has been standardizing domestic institutions and laws and regulations of its member states, ranging from economic systems such as finance, commerce, and labor, to social institutions like education, environment, and human rights. Newly entering members to European Union are required to abide by the standardized rules and regulations. It leaves us all at a loss to think how long it will take for ASEAN Secretariat in Jakarta to be on equal footing with the European Commission in Brussels. While ASEAN connectivity is on the rise, the ratio of intra-regional trade is still 22%, whereas that of European Union has already reached 60%. The European Union's GDP makes up 24% of the whole world, as compared with ASEAN reaching only 3%, I'm afraid. But early in 1990s, Tun Dr. Mahathir did show yet another genius idea of creating a community in this region by advocating the creation of East Asian Economic Grouping, inviting ASEAN, Southeast Asian nations, Japan, China, Korea, and Taiwan. He explained that this move should be very natural as Europeans were expanding and deepening their community, whereas North America agreed upon North American free trade called NAFTA, though, well, both regions have recently exhibited certain qualifications and adjustments during a surge of a populist wave for the last couple of years. The creation of Economic Partnership Agreement, EPA we call, plays a precursory role for the deeper and broader regional integration in the future. And this is perhaps the methodology with which to intensify the regional cooperation and integration in East Asia as well. But this agreement, Economic Partnership Agreement, is like free trade agreement. But trade represents only one facet of the universe of the regional cooperation. Economic partnerships have come to be more encompassing, with their coverage broadening to include institutional legal reforms in such areas as intellectual property rights protection, competition policy harmonization, or public procurement transparency. Financial experts have identified a number of important roles in such schemes as to cover linkages in financial markets. Experts in information technology, education, and science and technology have emphasized a need for creating bilateral and regional common infrastructure through legal cooperative frameworks. In 1999, upon Singapore's request, Japan started an attempt to launch a community building process in this region. In January 2002, Japan proposed to explore economic partnership agreements with any other ASEAN members and has created similar frameworks with most of the ASEAN members. These agreements function as beams and pillars of a bigger regional cooperation framework with harmonized legal structures. And now our region has been exploring a large-scale regional comprehensive economic partnership agreement termed as RCEP. A regional community building goes beyond the economic partnerships to political and security cooperation, just as the European Union has been developing its organization and institutions. In political and security domain, our region, East Asia, still has a serious problem. Circumstances in South China Sea pose grave danger to the norms of freedom and navigation, freedom of navigation, commerce, communications, and exchanges long entertained not only by nations in the region, but by the whole world. So therefore the stake is not just amongst the claimants, but very global and regional. The cohesion and solidarity of East Asia is now indisputably challenged. This issue to hamper regional and global interests constitutes concerns and requires engagement by many countries, which may naturally include Japan. Asia is now at the heart of world affairs, but also standing at crossroads. Well, before concluding my statement, let me discuss lastly the future of ASEAN and East Asia. Can ASEAN remain the present form and perform a role of regional hub, or will it become a part of a bigger regional forum and melt into any enlarged regional scheme? ASEAN's hospitality spirit has treated outside rough powers very well, and often even tamed them, politely ushering them one after another to become dialogue partners very successfully. And ASEAN has exhibited brilliant and crafty diplomacy with the principles of ASEAN centrality. I now realize that ASEAN has a disinclination towards losing its present formation for fear that their member countries might be dominated by any power or powers outside ASEAN, whichever power it may be. And this concern appears to have prompted ASEAN to claim persistently its centrality in any ASEAN-related expanded regional fora like the one now being held in Singapore, and your Prime Minister is attending it. While I understand such concerns of ASEAN, I have no reservation in any prospect in future that ASEAN can take initiative in and lead the expanded East Asian Regional Cooperation Scheme and bring actual benefits of regional collaboration to the peoples of the region. In the history of European Union, big boys such as Germany, France, and Britain have been providing resources and leading concepts of integration, whereas Benelux, Belgium, the Netherlands, and the Luxembourg, medium-sized countries, formed a nucleus and have played a pivotal role. ASEAN could also reveal a similar role. ASEAN is geographically located in the center of Greater East Asian region, convenient for other participants in the East Asian integration to take part in the debates. With a sizable population of about 600 million, and with their political positions being to seek stable and moderate paths, neither extreme nor dogmatic, ASEAN satisfies a sine qua non to become an assembly hall, and not only to provide a venue for discussions and consultations, but also to lead adequate East Asian regional cooperation architecture. Now I am delighted to receive any questions, comments, or criticisms. Thank you.
Thank you very much, His Excellency. We invite questions from the audience. First, we will take 2 questions. Yes, Dr. Mat Rosli and Professor Kushairi. So we will start with Dr. Rosli, then Prof. Kushairi. Thank you. Yes. Yes. Do we have a microphone? It's coming to you. Thank you.
Testing. おはようございます。はじめまして。せっかくで1991年の、小学部を慶応大学を卒業しました。
おめでとうございます。
はい、ありがとうございます。ユニセ大学のモハマド・ロスリーでございます。どうぞよろしくお願いいたします。今から日本語で英語で話してさせていただきます。はい、いいですね。In your opinion, what roles that Japan can play immediately to ensure political stability and economic development in the Southeast Asia region, particularly Malaysia? どうぞ以上でございます。よろしくお願いします。
Thank you very much, Dr. Rosli. Next, we invite Prof. Kushairi with the second question.
おはようございます。
おはようございます。
Mr. Ambassador, I am from this university. I am the recipient of some of the contributions from the Japanese universities in terms of research fund. Now, Japan government has contributed millions of research aids to the institutions in Malaysia through collaborative research. In view of future needs to foster closer ties in sharing and inculcating closer education integration between Japan and Malaysia, my question is the government of Japan plan to have a university or college in Japan to open its branch in Malaysia?
Thank you very much. His Excellency, Mr. Ambassador, I would like to repeat the question a little bit.
It's okay, thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you for the questions. To the first speaker, whose Japanese is impeccable, I wish I could hear more his Japanese. But I'm very happy to respond to his questions on what role Japan continues to play for the peace and prosperity and development of Southeast Asia and particularly Malaysia. It seems that I have already mostly covered how historically we have been playing a role and we have been assisting Southeast Asia and Malaysia. But I think, so therefore we would continue to play such a role, but again, due to the transformation which has started to take place in Malaysia, we feel far more encouraged to come to this region for help, or rather we would like to create a good partnership with Southeast Asian countries and people, particularly Malaysians. We would like to go hand in hand, and this is the common spirit we have already expressed and shared with countries in Southeast Asia and particularly Malaysia. We are very happy to identify the transformation to clean up the problems and welcome the determination of this country to move ahead to establish and create a better society and a more prosperous country based upon governance and transparency. So please rest assured that we are very happy and determined to move ahead hand in hand with Southeast Asia and particularly Malaysia. On the second question, as to our government's policy to encourage the establishment of the branches of Japanese universities in Malaysia, I must express our pleasure that this was initiated by Tun Dr. Mahathir. Japan, without this initiative, Japan would not or might not consider setting up a branch abroad. We have never established, our universities have never established their branches outside Japan. We were very closed circuit. But I think with the request from, a very genuine request from Tun Dr. Mahathir, our government has started to make a U-turn or make a vigorous determination to set up branches abroad, and we would like to start the branches to be set up first in Malaysia. very prominent universities have now been considering very seriously to set up branches in Malaysia. And in due course, hopefully, while I am still in Malaysia as ambassador, I would like to see the establishment, actual establishment, and hopefully this will come true. Thank you.
I think we still have time for 2 more questions. So first, I would pass the first question to Tuan Haji Shamsul, Registrar of UNICEF. Second question. Okay, Tuan Haji, please. Thank you.
Bismillah. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for your presentation. Malaysia has been very lucky. We have got investments from Europe, from the US, we have received a new phenomena. We have received interest from South Korea. Now, South Korea, they don't only send processors, their products, their systems to Malaysia. They also export their culture. So you get young people here enjoying K-pop. They are enjoying the South Korean look. Even my mother, she loves watching Korean drama. So the thing I want to ask is that Japan does not follow this line of trying to influence their culture onto other countries. Why is that? Thank you.
Shall I? Thank you. Thank you for the question. Do you hear me? Okay, thank you. Well, I cannot recognize whether there are some South Koreans in this room. But if there are, even if there are South Koreans, I think they would agree with me that although we are identical, we look each other very well, very close, resembles, and it is even difficult for ourselves to recognize whether they are South Koreans or Japanese. But the characters are different. We are very shy people, whereas South Koreans are very open and direct. So I think your suggestion that Japanese should follow South Koreans is quite pertinent. I will report back to Tokyo that they should consider it to follow South Koreans. Thank you.
Thank you very much, His Excellency. Please remain on stage. Next, I would like to invite Professor Dr. Muhammad Rezwan Othman, accompanied by Professor Dr. Mansidin Ahmad Ishaq, to come forward to present our token of appreciation to His Excellency Dr. Makio Miyagawa.
Interesting question.
Thank you very much, Prof. Rezwan and Prof. Sidin. Please remain on stage for the photo session. Background kan? Background. Tak ada okey. Mana yang ambil gambarnya ni? Sekarang terus announcing kan?
Nanti dulu, sudah diorang dah selesai.
Okey, dia turun sini kan? Dah duduk.
Lambat lah, barulah.
Aduh.
Dah, orang semua dah tidur.
Jadi jadi ya. Tunggu dia duduk dulu.
Yes, yes. Friday, yeah, Friday. Yes, yes. Ah. Thank you.
Announcing the departure of His Excellency Dr. Melawat. Oh, okay. Announcing the visit of His Excellency Dr. Magio Miyagawa, accompanied by the management of UNICEL, to the booth of the Expo. Ada. Okay. Okay, Prof. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. Okay, so now, that concludes the special lecture for today. Now I will pass the floor to the MC of the opening ceremony. Thank you very much for your attention.